on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan. Wow. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad someone is cheerful and jovial.
Oh, wow. You're saying you're not?
I just want...
I just got her back from public.
I just want the meteor to go ahead and hit Earth. Although we have until Tuesday, July 5th, when CERN does another one of their weird, God particle experiments.
When they operate the CERN particle accelerator, the largest ever known to mankind, at its highest power setting yet. That happens on July 5th. They will finish ripping our reality apart. Of course, they started in 2016.
It's true. So I'm just ready for reality to collapse. Because the direction we're heading in now, I see no hope.
And as you can tell, Heather was out in public earlier, and she sees no hope for mankind.
Well, it doesn't really... yes, being out in public, I have no hope for mankind. But also, America's in the toilet.
Apparently so. We're a little toilet baby.
Yeah, we're supposed to be, celebrating our independence tomorrow. And I'm like, what freedom? There's no freedom.
Well, there is freedom to choose an incredible podcast like Mountain Murders.
Yeah, that's about the only freedom. So anyway, I'm going to try to climb up out of this big asshole that I've been living in for the past 2 weeks.
Hey, you kids, get out of that asshole.
Okay, so speaking of going in public today, I have to share. We went on an errand, one of Dylan's little fence errands, and stopped off at a local ice cream spot.
Oh my God, people are going to think
tasty, creamery, delicious ice cream, right?
Yes.
I'm very excited. He bribes me with sundaes.
I had to promise her hand-dipped homemade ice cream if she were to ride with me to the other side of the world.
Yes. While I am in the ice cream shop, my daughter and I are standing in line. We overhear some very woke parenting, Dylan.
Oh, please
and
do
I
tell.
try not to judge other people's parenting because I'm like, you know what? Fuck them kids, right? But there's a kid, probably 3, maybe 4 years old, doing something he's not supposed to be doing. Real handsy. And his mom's telling him, no, you can't do that. You have to keep your hands to yourself.
Okay, this sounds pretty straightforward parenting to me.
And then she says, you can't do that, but you're still beautiful and mommy still loves you. So she tells him no, but then reinforces it with you're beautiful and I love you.
She was apologizing to the kid.
Essentially apologizing because she had to tell him no.
She had to tell him to keep his grubby little paws off something, basically.
And I said to my daughter, I was like, what did I just hear? Well, she's laughing because she's like, you would just tell me no.
Right.
Right? And
yeah,
I'm like,
if you don't listen, I will strike
and
you.
I said, and what? No.
Yeah, that's how I parent, son.
Not me.
You give them one chance, and then you knock the shit out of them little fuckers.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no, I'm just kidding,
That's
guys.
terrible.
I'm just kidding. You got to hit them below the neck.
Oh, my gosh.
What?
People don't know that you're joking.
Top of the head and the belly. It don't leave bruises.
People don't know that you're kidding. No, but why do we have to apologize for correcting bad behavior?
You don't. You just tell them no, and that's the way it is. I mean, you don't have to be mean about it, but just tell them to cut it out.
Can you imagine the long-term effects of this style of parenting, like apologizing because you're doing your job as a parent?
I'm afraid what you end up with, and this is no shade on anyone out there, do you? Because I made mistakes plenty as a parent, so I'm not perfect for sure. But you may end up with a kid who just doesn't recognize rules and consequences. If you're always trying to sugarcoat the fact that they just need to stop doing what they're doing and listen, right?
I'm just wondering if there will be a day when this child has a job as an adult and child's boss tells them do A, B, and C, don't do D. is the boss going to be like, but you're still beautiful and I love you?
They'll just forever be waiting on the apology on the back
Sorry,
end.
I have to tell you not to do this, but you can't do this.
You have to put pants on, Jeremy. I'm
Anywho.
sorry. You're going to have to put your penis away.
It was just one example of like, let me off the planet. Stop the ride. I'm ready to get off.
Yeah, well,
It's just too much. It's
I can
too
only
much for
take
me.
Heather out in public for so long, and then her timer runs out, and I have to rush her off the street before she hurts someone.
I'm sorry, Dylan. I love you, but you need to listen.
You
It's
never
time
tell
for the
me sorry when you say
podcast.
something crazy like, I think you've had enough beers, you know?
Well, I'm not going to
You
apologize
don't-
about that.
Yeah, and I think that is the hole that's been left inside of me.
Listen to this motherfucker claiming he's country, don't know how to string a bean.
I was stringing the beans fine. See, now you've went on some of our social media and our Discord and told people I straight out don't know how to string beans.
You asked me how to string beans, Dylan, and when I said, "Are you serious?" you were like, "Yeah, how do I do it?" And then you asked me, "Why? Why do we do this?
Yeah, no one's ever answered it to me why we string beans.
Do you want to eat a stringy bean?
After you asked me that,
Do you want to be digging some strings out your teeth?"
so the strings don't cook down, apparently. They
No.
stay intact. Is that right?
Yes, Dylan.
Okay.
So, and then you're trying to play it off like you know everything there is to know about beans.
I never once claimed to be a bean spurt.
You did.
Okay.
Just now.
I did not.
When you ask, how do I string them? And then why do I string them?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't just tell me to push the button. It's how I am at work. I need to know why and what happens when I push
And then
the
I
button.
said, oh, I guess you grew up eating rich people green beans that came out of a can. I grew up eating the green beans that my granny was like, go get them out the fucking garden.
Yeah, so you had access to organic small batch green beans, and you're telling me I'm the rich person.
Yeah, because them heirloom beans had been in our family for 60 years, okay?
Oh, my
Them
God.
seeds.
Okay, enough about our incredible day out and about. And the fact I do know how to string beans. I am
He
country.
doesn't. He's not.
She needs to apologize to me
He
for saying
doesn't-
that.
No, he doesn't even like cornbread and milk, so.
Well, no.
He doesn't like greens.
Wow. I'm starting to sound like I might not be country.
You're not.
I do cook with lard and a cast iron skillet.
Now that you married me,
Oh, shit.
now that I got a skillet, ain't your skillet? You didn't bring no skillet into this relationship.
I was going to say, didn't I bring a skillet in this relationship?
When? That
No.
was my skillet.
Oh, it was just my bags of clothes. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Enough. Trying to make light because we do have one of those cases, Dylan, that we swore we'd never do.
This, honestly, folks, we do it now and again. We enjoy it. We're going to talk about a case that is square inside the top 10. And
We
this
said
may
we
surprise
we said
people.
we would never do it, but we're going to do it.
Well, this one is interesting, and it's a huge story. So I really do believe you have the ability to come at it from maybe a different perspective.
Born and raised right here in Appalachia.
I'm sorry.
We're talking about Charles Manson.
We're going to talk about little Charlie.
So Charles Manson's story, as you know, Dylan, has many layers. Of course, there is madness, chaos, occult, and crimes. But to truly understand Manson, and I'm sure we're not going to tell these folks anything new about this enigmatic man, but we do need to understand how he arrived at being one of the United States' greatest infamies.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say.
Quote, "My father is the jailhouse. My father is your system. I have done my best to get along in your world, and now you want to kill me. And I look at you, and I look at how incompetent you all are. Then I say to myself, you want to kill me? Ha! I'm already dead. Have been all my life."
Wow.
Charles Manson from his trial testimony in 1970. Now, as wacky and out there as Manson has been made out to be in interviews and stories about him, I have to say, after reading some of his words, he kind of makes sense. Does that make me a wacky person?
While you've been researching this, I'm a little bit worried about you because I feel like you may have been like the eighth girl in his group or however many there was. You may have been part of it.
Well, only if I would have had access to a shower and toothbrush.
That's what would have held you back.
I'm not sure those hippies at Spawn Ranch were showering.
I'm not sure they had access to running hot water.
I'm saying from a philosophical standpoint, guy makes sense on a lot of things.
Sometimes. Right? You know, some argue that he just leaned into that. Oh, if you're going to paint me in this light, I'll just be that character. Right? I will be it times 10, you know?
And we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Ada Kathleen Maddox. We have to start before the beginning, if that makes sense, Dylan.
I don't know how you do that, but let's do
Let's do it. Ada Kathleen Maddox was born in 1918 to parents Nancy Ingram and Charles Maddox. Nancy was from the Kentucky backwoods and was a deeply devout fundamentalist Christian, a member of the Nazarene Church. She was a woman who took the Bible literally. Her husband Charlie, as he was known, Charles Maddox, Charlie was a World War I veteran who returned home from the war to become a train conductor with the Chesapeake, Ohio Railroad. And by Kentucky standards, the family was middle class. The Maddox family purchased a home in Ashland, and Nancy was a staunch believer, as I mentioned, of the Nazarene faith, disapproving of movies, music, dancing, swearing, drinking alcohol, wearing makeup, or allowing the girls to wear what she would call revealing clothing.
Okay.
Like, don't show your shins.
So basically, she's the parents in Footloose.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
So the family purchased a home on Hilton Avenue for $5,000. Nancy tried her hardest to raise the children in the church with a strict dress code for her daughters. The girls weren't allowed to get haircuts. They also were taught secular music was bad, as was dancing, as I mentioned, going to the movies, and even dating. Charlie mostly let Nancy take care of the child rearing, and she ruled the home with an iron fist. By 1931, Charlie had died of pneumonia, leaving behind a pension for Nancy. So, considering this was like the beginning of the Great Depression, things were all around, pretty crummy for the rest of the country. With his passing, it didn't leave her financially destitute. Like, he had a nice pension from the railroad, so they were able to maintain that standard of living.
So the income's still coming in. It's a outline pension from the railroad, which is obviously not dissolved, even though the depression's upon us. So they just continue to, one of the lucky people to be able to get by still, right?
Yeah, I mean, they still were kind of maintaining their middle class lifestyle. Kathleen was 13 when her father passed away, and she was considered the most disobedient of Nancy's children. Kathleen wanted to live a free life from the strict holiness religion. The church doctrine stated, quote, all forms of dancing that detract from spiritual growth and break down proper moral inhibitions and reserve are outlawed.
Whoa.
Right? So the teenager would often hide in the family's kitchen and practice the jitterbug.
Oh my gosh, she would be in there secretly pop locking and dropping it.
She had like a space. She described the space kind of being like between the stove and like a wall where she would get back in there and like get down on it so her mom couldn't see.
So she would literally, that's how, which is crazy to me to go this hardcore with your beliefs, personally, I believe. Hide by herself.
And do the stanky leg.
And do the jitterbug, which was that day's version of the stanky leg, let's be honest. And enjoy that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like teaching me how to Dougie, baby. Like a lot of teenagers, Kathleen thought she would sneak out, but knew the chances of someone seeing her in Ashland and then reporting back to her mother was high. Small town, nosy busybodies. So by the time she was 15, Kathleen decided to head over the river to Ironton in Ohio, which was a hotbed of sinful activity, with a red light district offering sex, drinks, and dancing.
See, this is where I would be hanging out.
Ritzy Ray's was a favorite spot for the teenager. It was at Ritzy Ray's she likely met a 23-year-old con man, hustler, and drugstore cowboy named Colonel Scott.
His name's Colonel?
His name is Colonel.
Okay.
I wish we could have a child, Dylan, and name him the Commodore.
Really? It'd be like Head Start. The teachers have to call him the Commodore.
Yes.
Make that his official
the
name.
Commodore, yes. Scott was known around town along with his brother for spearheading criminal activities and get-rich-quick schemes. Now, check this story out, Dylan. At one point, there was a toll bridge that closed down, but Colonel and his brother seized the booth and started charging tolls.
So
and they made a small fortune in a matter of days running this illegal toll.
So the toll shut down. The road's obviously still operating through there, the traffic. So they unofficially reopened the toll booth and are collecting tolls from people.
Yes.
That's actually a genius idea.
Making a bundle doing this until they got caught.
And people's like, well, I paid my toll. And somebody connected with the toll bridge is like, well, they shut that down 6 weeks ago, Jim.
He was such a smooth talker that the Colonel completely, and I'm going to call him the Colonel completely avoided informing Kathleen of his position as a married man and led the young girl to believe he was also an Army colonel, hence the name Colonel Scott. But that was just his birth name. He wasn't in the Army.
Well, that's why I'm called the Colonel, because I've been a colonel all my life, even when I was just a little kid. We had the little toddler Navy, and I was a...
I was thinking that they called him the Colonel because he grew up on a corn farm.
The Colonel.
Yeah.
K-E-R.
You like
nice.
That? Yes. So by spring of 1934, Kathleen learned she was pregnant. Keep in mind, she's 15.
Okay.
I mean,
So that's, but back then, it happened a lot at the younger ages, right?
well, not typically because a 15-year-old's going off enjoying the nightlife and boogieing on the disco round.
Well, yeah, that's how you get in trouble, You're out there doing adult things and acting grown.
When she told the 24-year-old Colonel Scott, he said he'd been called away on Army business, but would soon return and they could figure out what to do. Colonel abandoned Kathleen. When her mother learned of the pregnancy, Nancy surprisingly didn't kick her teen daughter out of the house. Instead, she made demands that this baby be raised with a religious upbringing and decided to send her daughter to Cincinnati to have the baby away from the wagging tongues of Ashland.
So on the Colonel's part, this is ingenious. Your name just happens to be Colonel. And then you tell a lie that you're in the armed forces, whatever, Army, whatever. And then anytime anything comes up, you can just be like, hey, I'm getting deployed. I got to go to Cambodia next weekend. And then, boom, you're just gone. But then they're like, there's nothing I can do about it. He's off protecting our freedoms.
Well, you do work with a guy who does that quite a bit, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay. So desperate to find a husband so her child would not be born a bastard, Kathleen set her sights on 25-year-old William Manson. Little is known about William Manson, save for he was born in 1909 and his military enlistment paperwork listed him as an unskilled machine shop worker. By August 21st, a marriage license had been issued to the couple, Kathleen lying that she was 21 at the time. On November 12th of 1934, at the Cincinnati General Hospital, the couple welcomed a son who would be called No Name Maddox for 2 weeks before being named Charles Mills Manson after his paternal grandfather and Kathleen's husband.
Now, see, you're already throwing me curveballs in the history of Charlie's parents. Now, I'd always heard that she was basically a prostitute who got pregnant and he was just kind of, left to, just kind of abandoned in the hospital. That's not exactly how it's happened, right?
No, we'll get into that, Dylan.
Interesting.
No. So from birth, Charlie was an outcast and perhaps by some standards, an outlaw. His birth set the stage for a lifetime of living on the fringes of society. Though William worked as a prop manager at a circus when he met Kathleen, he bounced around from job to job, And despite her new experience with motherhood, teenage Kathleen was not ready to settle down. The same nightlife that had gotten her into trouble led her back to carouse and party. She would often leave for days at a time, her infant son in the care of Kathleen's sister, Aunt Glenna, known to Charlie as Auntie Glenna, or Grandmother Nancy. There were also questionable babysitters. And truth be told, there is no way for us to truly know what baby Charlie experienced because, and to borrow a phrase that my grandparents used to invoke, this child was left from pillar to post. Have you ever heard somebody say that?
Yeah, so basically left with whoever, whenever,
yeah.
a lot, very often.
Kathleen would tell the babysitter, I'll be back in a couple hours, and wouldn't return for 3 or 4 days.
I must say, this is one of the most irresponsible moves a parent can do, in my opinion, to leave your child with someone and not have it strictly outlined. Now, if they're with family and, hey, I don't want to come tonight, I'll be there in the morning, they're at their grandparents' house, and then you get them at lunch, different story. But especially when unconnected family, or even with your family, to say, I will be here later, and then just fall off the map, off the grid, and, you can't be contacted, I think it's one of the most irresponsible things you can do as a parent.
It's very dangerous.
It's just very dangerous, and it's super rude. I mean, does that make sense? It's very rude to the person that you're...
Well, it's extremely rude, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking of all of the criminal cases that have sprung up from these situations. One that comes to mind is the Sylvia Lycan story,
Yeah.
where she was left in the company of Gertrude Benschwitz or whatever, and that was a very bad situation.
Yeah. Well, and if you're going to do that, then, Lord knows that, you can question the character of many of the people they're likely leaving their children with.
Well, it just sounds
typically.
like Kathleen was not exactly vetting babysitters in the best way. It was just sort of whoever was available and might watch her child. A
Yeah.
neighbor, someone she knew from the bar. I mean, so who knows?
Well, and then you open your poor child up to, abuse,
Exactly.
molestation.
So I'm just saying,
physical
we don't even know
abuse.
what he could have experienced as a little baby, right? Soon, William grew tired of the situation and filed for divorce, citing gross neglect of duty on his wife's behalf after having cohabitated together for only about 4.5 months. In the proceedings, he claimed there were no children born of the marriage. Therefore, William was not ordered to pay child support for young Charlie. In this divorce paperwork, he said Kathleen refused to cook any meals, refused to do any housework or keep things clean, and refused to perform her marital duties.
Ah, that's interesting. Dereliction of duty.
The only thing the boy was to get from his stepfather was a last name. In Charlie's own words, he will say, quote, "The marriage wasn't one of those long-term things, and I don't remember him. Whether the divorce was his fault or my mom's, I never did know. Probably mom's. She was always a pretty promiscuous little broad."
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting way to talk about your mom, but hey, you're just calling it like you see it, I guess.
Finally, Kathleen, who had no financial means, went to Kentucky to file a bastardy suit against Colonel Scott. He was ordered to pay a $5 a month payment of child support for his son Charlie, which he didn't do. Scott never paid any more than the initial $25 he had been ordered to pay on the day of their court hearing. According to an LA Times interview in 1971, Kathleen stated that Colonel Scott took Charlie on weekends, yet other accounts dispute this, even stating that his wife, Dorothy, was unaware he had a bastard son. So it definitely seems like later Kathleen has tried to play it off like, oh no, he was very involved in young Charlie's life.
Right.
But Charles' other relatives, they're like, no, he never even saw his dad.
Yeah, no one else backs up that version, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, in this interview I read with Kathleen from 1971, I think she's very much trying to backpedal from the truth to paint herself in a less negative light, if that makes sense. Like she doesn't want people to think ill of her or something.
Right.
That's what I gathered from the interview. With few prospects, little education, and no job skills, Kathleen divided her time between Nancy's home in Ashland and her sister's house, Glenna, we've talked about, in North Charleston, because she lives in Charleston, West Virginia. She was still hell-bent on living a fun life, and in 1936, Kathleen was involved in a car accident in Eaton, Ohio. She and a friend were hitchhiking into Ohio, and they had gotten a car somewhere stuck in a culvert. She ended up lying to a police officer, telling him that her age was 25, and this officer held Kathleen and her friend after this crash. There was even a little newspaper blurb about it. She was about 176 miles from home at the time, and she was only 16. And the officer was like, even in the news report, she claimed to be 25 but looked 16.
Jeez Louise, so she's went through all this with a child and had a second husband or second partner.
Yes.
And now he's gone and all this, and she's just now 16 years old.
Yes.
Holy cow.
And out joyriding in a car 176 miles away from home. So this just kind of gives you an idea of Kathleen's like freewheeling lifestyle. While she's got a baby, you know, more than 2 hours away, she's out living it up.
Leaving it with whoever, taking off for days at a time.
Exactly.
Okay.
In 1938, Kathleen was briefly engaged to a man, but that didn't work out. There was no wedding, despite an announcement being printed in the newspaper. Kathleen was close with her brother Luther. He was her younger brother. And together, it seems like they got into a lot of trouble together growing up. On August 1st of 1939, Kathleen, along with Luther's girlfriend, met a man named Frank Martin. Martin was flashing cash at a bar where they were hanging out.
I typically do this at bars as well.
And this gave Kathleen an idea. She asked the stranger to rent a room for them, letting on like these two women were interested in having a tryst with Martin.
Whoa.
Yeah. Kathleen then contacted her brother Luther and set a plan into motion. Luther showed up at this like bar/restaurant where they were hanging out.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a beer joint that has food. Who knows? And he holds a ketchup bottle to Martin's head as if it were a gun, and then like hits him with this ketchup bottle.
So she called Luther in to rob this guy.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
So they're, what do they call that? Hitting a lick?
Yeah, I guess so.
Hitting a lick. Literally, they're hitting this guy with a ketchup bottle on the back of the head. And they rob him of $27. So not even like they're getting away with a lot of money.
Well, I mean, given the, inflation and all, that was a few dollars back then, quite a bit more than it would be nowadays.
Well, it just seems like if you were going to rob somebody, you would get more than $27.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, and he's flashing cash. Is this $27? And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what you got to do is you got to get a 20 or 100 or a 50. And then you put a bunch of ones in the middle. Like you get another 50 and get it cashed out in the ones. And then now you got that dog knot, right? And so when you pull that out, people's like, hey, the chicks at the bar or whoever you're trying to hang out with. I was like, wow, this guy right here.
The chicks.
Yeah, and then they set up, arrange some type of situation where they rob you.
I feel like you would get robbed.
And they find out that
a man who can't string beans is a perfect candidate to be robbed.
And they find out you only got like $19 on you. You know what I mean?
And that's exactly what would happen if someone robbed you.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm always cash poor, and you never know which one of my accounts are in the red. So good luck robbing me. And that's a joke I always say. If somebody steals my identity, they would contact me back in 7 days and beg me to take it back.
Martin was also assaulted, as I mentioned. It didn't take long for law enforcement to catch up with Kathleen, who had been seen in the company of Martin at the bar earlier. And she was known to the bartenders, known around the bar. So it was very easy for police to figure out who she was. She didn't try at all to conceal her identity, and her brother didn't either.
Yeah, this was just a dumb plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, she was given 5 years in prison at Moundsville for armed robbery.
Wow. So.
And that West Virginia state pen, not a place you want to fuck around and find out about.
So it sounds maybe she's already been in some petty trouble or is known to law enforcement, do you think, even though if it's not outlined in your research? Because that seems pretty stiff in the beginning. If that's like your first time you got in trouble to get 5 years for something
For
like
armed
that.
robbery?
Well, I guess not. That's pretty serious. Juries back then would not find that very, you wouldn't be able to win with the jury in a situation like
Well,
that.
and I think just due to the like societal attitudes at the time,
Right.
especially a young lady who was willing to go through with an armed robbery like that, probably definitely didn't work in her favor. They probably were like, mm-mm. So, yeah, she goes off to Moundsville, and Nancy took in her grandson, Charlie. Aunt Glenna, which Glenna is Kathleen's older sister, and her husband, Bill Thomas, had moved outside of Wheeling, West Virginia to, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, someone will correct me if I'm not, McMecken, West Virginia.
McMecken?
McMecken, or it's McMechen, but I think it's McMecken. Okay?
McMechen.
McMecken. I don't know.
I don't know.
I was trying to find how to pronounce it on YouTube, and I would find videos, but then no one would ever actually say the name of the town, so I'm just like, fuck, I don't know.
That's because they didn't know either. They're waiting on someone else to say it first.
So please, someone, let me know if I'm saying McMecken correctly. Okay, so this is a town full of working class families. There's a lot of mill and railroad jobs in this area, and the Thomases were described as a picture-perfect family. Bill was a hardworking, God-fearing man. Glenna was a good mother, like stay-at-home mom, and their daughter Joanna was a polite student who earned good grades. They went to church, every Sunday. I mean, everybody who knew them described them as just sort of that all-American, wholesome family.
So Charlie's moms went to jail for 5 years.
Yes.
I'm just going to do at least half or 2/3 of that. I don't know what the case was back then. So this is the family he's been left with.
Well, he's been left with his grandmother.
Okay.
But, his Aunt Glenna and her husband, Uncle Bill, they live in Wheeling, which is very close to Moundsville. Like, when I went to visit the prison, we drove through Wheeling. It's kind of like one of those, maybe 10, 15, 20 miles away kind of thing. So, very close outside of this area. So, Nancy thought it would be a great idea for Charlie to move in with Glenna and Bill so he could be close to Kathleen while she was in prison. But Charlie did not fit in at all. His cousin Joanna described him as a very small boy who was absolutely disagreeable. Desperate for attention, it didn't matter if it was positive or negative attention, as long as Charlie was at the center. He lied constantly, and Glenna thought the stability of her home was just what young Charlie needed. But he just did not fit in with them at all.
And it's understandable for a child who's been kind of passed around like this to have some of these, to act this way. As far as wanting to be center of attention, no matter if it's negative or positive, well, that's going to come from not feeling connected or close to someone.
Right.
Or getting that nurturing when you're a small child.
Looking back on this, we can see that Charlie was a troubled child and definitely could have benefited from probably having some counseling and therapy. But, I mean, come on, it's in the 1930s. They're just like, what is up with this troubled child? He's a problem. They don't really know how to handle him. Now, Kathleen says at this time, Charlie was definitely not neglected. A lot of, as you mentioned, Dylan, articles, movies, podcasts have made it out like Charlie was just this neglected child. And she's like, that is actually not true at all. He was always surrounded by family and typically was pampered by the women around him, especially his grandmother, Nancy. She said that her son never had to work as a child, including like doing chores, because he had a way with people, especially the women in his life, and could totally get out of cutting the grass, taking out the trash.
Oh, really?
Just by being like, oh, but grandma, and like being adorable.
But Grammy.
And the women, from an early age, he kind of learned how to play up this cute little boy. Look at me.
Ah, yeah, Granny strung out on acid and was telling her a bunch of post-apocalyptic bullshit. Damn it, Charles. What a strange little kid he is.
Stupid. So Moundsville Prison at the time was overcrowded about 3 times its regular capacity. It was infested with rats and cockroaches. The prison was known to turn profits even during the Great Depression by making inmates work 9-hour days, 6.5 days a week.
Now, is this where they took him up? They had a coal mine. Is this where they made a mine at the prison?
I am not sure if that was Moundsville. I think you might be talking about Brushy Mountain.
Ah, yes, it
Brushy
could be.
Mount or whatever.
But you went there, right? You went to Moundsville.
I did go there.
And so even though it was in this decrepit, abandoned state, you can still get a feel for a place about how harsh or how it may have been in its heyday.
Look, the energy in this place not good.
Ominous?
Very draining.
Okay.
Just a very, ominous. Like, my friend and I both, we felt very emotionally exhausted and, like, drained when we left there.
Now, and
it was a very dangerous prison.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Women were assigned to an in-house sewing factory. The inmates were overworked, beaten, malnourished, and living in filthy conditions. Yet somehow Kathleen was a model prisoner while serving her sentence. Young Charlie would often cry after visits with his mother. Uncle Bill was an old school kind of guy, what we would label today, Dylan, as like toxic masculinity.
Okay, suck it up, boys don't cry, all that bullshit.
Yeah,
right?
And it did not sit well with him that Charlie was so sensitive.
Right, and through his eyes, it's going to be viewed as weak.
Yes.
You're not a man.
Like telling this little boy, you have to man up, quit crying, I'll give you something to cry about. I need to teach you to fight. We got to toughen you up.
Now, and I must say, in this day and age, with all the wokeness and the POC and the...
Now, I'm sorry.
Wait, that's people of color. I meant political correctness. The PC.
Yes.
The people of color are fine. We love you. We want, like all shades, love you all. But the political correctness and all that, some of it can seem to go too far. But
you mean like apologizing to your child because you have to tell them no?
Man, fuck that little sticky bastard. In public touching shit, okay? You ain't buying this ice cream, so you sit over there and you shut the fuck up and I'll get back to you in a minute.
Jeez.
That's how you handle that kid. No, but I must say, right quick, that men, for a long time, over all different types of raising, upbringings, and things, have had this idea that they can express emotions. They have to be tough, walk it off, even if you're not with some full-blown toxic guy like Uncle Bill here or whatever his name is. It's just a kind of general theme.
Well, I just think
that you get.
I mean, this is definitely not good, right? But I think a lot of that generation, especially,
right, that
is how you grew up. And that is how you were supposed to act. And even if it wasn't right, I mean, this is how Bill had been brought up. So he thought, well, I turned out okay. This is how you raise kids.
That's right. I don't express my emotions. I stuff them deep down inside, and I cry in the dark by myself at night. I'm just fine, you son of a bitch.
That's why, I mean, we neglect men's mental health.
That's what I meant.
These are all issues that we've come to realize today, and they're still problems, you know?
I do think it's good that men are starting to learn in some cases that it's okay to need help or, this and that. And I'm not trying to be like
show emotion.
Poor men or, I'm not on that, the whole men's rights. I mean, that stuff can go way too far the other way, but that really has been done for many generations. And I'm glad it's finally kind of loosening up a little bit.
Recognizing
for men's health,
that
mental health.
That's not how you have to be. And that it's okay to let your little boy cry.
It is okay.
And if your little boy wants a doll, it's okay.
Unless they're being a whiny little bitch in the ice cream place and they won't keep putting their little sticky, grubby paws all over shit, okay?
Okay,
Look,
moving along. So in November...
You little bastard. I'm just kidding, folks.
He's not.
I'd have kicked that little kid right in his little leg. And then I'd apologize too. I'm sorry I didn't do that sooner, you little piece of shit.
Lost a lot of our listeners.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, people hate you now.
People hate that kid, and they won't admit it.
Now instead of hating me, people hate you and love me.
Yeah.
The tables have turned.
Oh, then nobody hates you.
In November of 1939, moving along, Charlie was sent to school and placed in a teacher named Mrs. Varner's class. What do you think about Mrs. Varner?
Well, I don't know. She may be some old school, scary school marm.
Oh, dude, she was. She was known as a particularly cruel, harsh teacher who ran classes like a drill sergeant. Her favorite students were given preference and placed at the front of the class. Her least favorite, targeted students, were placed on the very back row. From the moment she laid eyes on little Charlie, Mrs. Varner did not like the looks of this child.
So he didn't have a chance.
He did not have a chance. She saw him and was like, nope. So after the very first day of school, Charlie came home crying. He had been bullied not only by the teacher, but by the students as well. Uncle Bill knew if the pint-sized Charlie was going to make it, he would need to toughen up. But Bill's approach, probably not the best, Dylan.
I could imagine.
Bill forced Charlie to wear a dress to school the next day.
What? Dude. Okay, how's that supposed to help him out when everybody's going to make fun of him?
He should have just named him Sue.
I was going to say, what's next? Name him Sue?
Yeah, just change his name to Sue.
Oh, he had to fight all his life. Damn, Uncle Bill. So he's like, look, heard you're having a tough time at school, right? So let's put you in a dress.
Yeah, I think
and send you
his
down
attitude
there.
was like, nut up or shut up. I'm going to put you in a dress and send you to school, and then you'll get your little ass kicked, and you'll learn to toughen up. You either will or you won't.
Okay, Uncle Bill. Why do I feel like Uncle Bill's parenting guide would not work today?
Well, it probably wouldn't. Uncle Bill reminds me of my dad.
Okay.
Because, that's the kind of shit my dad would tell my brother.
Yeah, he's like, oh, yeah, you crying? You feeling sensitive, you little son of a bitch?
Yeah, I remember my brother wanted a doll when he was little.
Uh-oh. Was it an action figure or was it a full-blown doll?
No, like a doll. Like, he wanted like a Cabbage Patch baby or something. I mean, what's wrong with that? Oh, my God, my dad lost it. And this has to be a not only humiliating, but psychologically damaging experience for a kid.
Well, yeah. I mean, on multiple fronts. I mean, this could be devastating.
Because I'm sure little Charlie felt like he didn't have anywhere to turn. And he's just getting it from all sides.
Well, he's not going to go to school and find comfort there. He's already got an adversary there and his teacher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Life at school did not improve for Charlie. He struggled academically, could barely read, and was bullied incessantly. Instead of being nurtured at home, Bill and Glenna were hard on him. Joanna said it didn't matter what punishment Charlie received. Quote, you could whip him all day and he'd still act however he wanted. Charlie never accepted responsibility and always blamed others for his bad behavior, offering up excuse after excuse. Like every time he got in trouble, it was someone else's fault. He had a reason why. He would pull my mom's in jail card.
Yeah. Okay. So you should feel bad for me. I should get like special treatment kind of thing.
Yeah. So for 2.5 years, he lived with the Thomases. Charlie had an interest in guns, knives, and music. But his behavior, it didn't improve at all in those 2.5 years. At one point, he tried to attack his cousin Joanna with a sickle.
Damn.
Yeah.
Now that's a full-on sickle is a long farming tool.
Yes.
With a very, very sharp pointed edge on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super dangerous.
He learned to play piano by ear and enjoyed singing. Glenna dragged him to church, and the only part Charlie really enjoyed was singing hymns. That was something that he took pleasure in, the singing, playing piano. And let's face it, he has to have some talent to be able to learn to play by ear.
Well, yeah, sure.
Right?
A lot of talent.
I mean, that's not an easy feat.
No, I could listen for a year straight and not be able to strike a lick.
Yeah, me either. I have zero musical talent whatsoever. And that's something I've always really wished I could sing or play an instrument.
I always wanted to play some buckets, on the street corner in the city.
Did you?
Yeah, I always want to beat on them buckets. You know what I mean?
I remember trying to take some, instrument lessons when I was young and just not very good at it. It was basically just terrible. And the instructor was like, yeah.
Damn, they couldn't even fake it for the money for the lessons, right?
Yeah. The guy was like, maybe this isn't for her.
It's your little hands.
Yeah,
I think that's why I couldn't play the guitar either. My hands are little.
Yeah. By 1942, Kathleen was paroled after serving 3 years of the 5-year sentence. Charlie would later say the first days after his mother's release were some of the happiest days of his life. Reunited, the pair moved to Charleston, West Virginia, where Kathleen was hired at a grocery store. Charlie had already learned how to manipulate people, especially women, as I mentioned. During this time, he began skipping school, got into trouble, and was unruly.
Well, it seems like the whole time, just it's the way his brain's wired. He doesn't really like to be told what to do.
Like he's oppositional defiant?
Yeah,
perhaps?
something like that. Like he thinks he knows good enough, and that he really. I mean, he sounds like one of these people, and I'm this way to a degree. Is even if he was going to do something, but then you direct him to do it, or tell him he has to do that, or else. Now, even though he was going to do it in the beginning, he don't want to do it. Just because you told him to do it.
Yeah, I know. I've seen that time and time again. I'll be like, hey, Dylan, do you think maybe you could put your clothes away? And then they just sit there for 3 weeks.
Right. I was going to put those clothes away, but don't you put me on a damn schedule, okay? I don't have a schedule, right?
Yeah, I've noticed.
Society will not pigeonhole me into some fucked up schedule.
It's true. I've never met quite a procrastinator like you.
Well, I do have to go to work.
It's true.
And they do have a fucked up schedule.
Are you done?
God damn you, society. Sorry.
Kathleen, who was still interested in partying, was not fully equipped to handle a child like Charlie. 24-year-old Kathleen fell back into old habits of staying out late, staying out all night, drinking, going out and dancing, leaving Charlie alone or in the care of, again, whoever was available to watch him at the time. And she was arrested for a grand larceny charge, but that was eventually dropped.
But still, she hasn't learned her lesson.
No.
She's took 5 years of her youth away from her, however much she served, most of it, I'm guessing. At least 3 or so. And being away from her child, which I don't think that was exactly occupying her mind. I don't think that was horrible for her. And right back to doing the same shit again.
Exactly. She decided to move to Indianapolis with Charlie in tow. It has been said that Kathleen worked as a prostitute while in Indiana. Charlie was incorrigible, but Kathleen had her own problems, struggling with alcoholism. Kathleen has denied the accusations that she was a sex worker, and Charlie said his mother was more like a free-loving hippie chick.
So more like she's just maybe a promiscuous woman who hangs out with a bunch of different people, but not a straight-out prostitute for money.
Right, but there's a book that was part of my research called Charlie in His Own Words, where he described prostitution and was basically saying, like, hey, if, there's no problem if a lady wants to go out and make a mutual agreement with a gentleman and this pays her rent and puts food on the table, then so be it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I agree.
It's consenting adults.
It's hers.
So, yeah, and he said that he felt like a woman's sexuality was something that was like her, what did he call it? Like her value or her product that she owns and contains. And she should be able to do whatever she wants. Like, it's her own commodity.
It's her own personal commodity.
That she should be able to do what she wants with it.
See, and every woman has this little love factory. They carry it everywhere they go. And they're just churning out love with it.
I think mine's a hate factory.
Well, yours
It's
needs...
got teeth and it's like...
Yours might
like
need
a troll bridge.
to be like some upgrades. Maybe. Not upgrades, but it's a mean factory.
No, it's just shut down.
It's shut down.
It's unavailable to the public.
Everybody's
It's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Like, you have to have a golden ticket to get inside. You know what I'm
Aha!
saying?
Wow! So you're basically describing prostitution. People give you gold. They're allowed to come inside your love factory.
I can do whatever I want with my commodity, according to Charles Manson.
Well, no, you have a co-owner now because we're married, so you can't do anything you want with it.
I'll do whatever I damn want with it.
I had to shut down the mini sausage factory.
I didn't tell you to shut it down.
Well, I had to close it off to the public.
Yeah, well, the public don't want it. Okay.
Well, they don't
It
know
was
where-
already struggling and about to file bankruptcy when I met it. So there's that.
Our business plan was sound, you son of a bitch. You take that back.
I will not. Okay.
Well, oh, whoa, I can't have a commodity factory too?
Okay.
They don't know where to get zesty small sausages
I
at
was
now.
gonna say, I'm sure somebody out there likes a little Vianney.
Spicy wieners.
A little Vianney. Okay, so in August, enough talking about this, Dylan. Let's move along. People are probably like, enough, Heather and Dylan.
I
And
think they want to hear more about your love
And
factory.
my hate factory. Okay? It's fueling all the fucked up stuff in the world. It's just hateful.
Oh my God, your vagina's to blame for all this shit going on in the world?
It hates
Oh
everybody.
my God, turn it off.
In August of 1943, Kathleen married a man named Lewis Cavender that she'd met at Alcoholics Anonymous. He was an alcoholic who would not work and had no interest in being a stepfather.
I got to imagine that an AA meeting is not the place to meet. Well, for one, two addicts shouldn't get together. And if either of you are in full-on recovery or at the start of your recovery, it's so dangerous for addicts to get together. There's so many reasons you guys shouldn't be together.
So years ago, I guess before the world was completely PC, I had a T-shirt that I would wear in college, and it said AA, where I go to pick up drunk sluts.
Wow. Damn. Where did you get that? Abercrombie and Fitch?
Yes.
They were known for their shitty little
No, I don't know where I got
crappy
it.
shirts.
I just liked wearing shirts that made people be like, oh, that's offensive. And I'd be like, I know.
Would you wear that shirt now?
Probably not.
I would.
No, I probably wouldn't.
It's too much.
Yeah.
You're offending sluts and drunks, so you can't wear that shirt, right? I'd be like, if this shirt offends you, you're either a drunk or a slut.
I don't see anything wrong with
Or a drunk slut.
I don't see anything wrong with being a drunk slut. I married you. And I love you, and you're a drunk slut.
Wow, the revelations coming out on this episode.
Okay. So by now, Charlie was shoplifting and had truancy officers at the house constantly. Feeling frustrated with her son, Kathleen sent him back to live with Nancy. 12-year-old Charlie was running away, and in 1947, he was breaking into cars, breaking into businesses. I mean, he's like a little fucking delinquent.
Well, yeah, well,
out running a street.
he's not going to follow the rules. He's big enough that he's got his feet under him now and just run around and he thinks he can do whatever he wants.
By 14, Charlie was working odd jobs and was paying for a room in downtown Indianapolis, living by himself and not with his mother. So when Kathleen's like, he wasn't neglected, if you're 14-year-olds living alone and paying their own bills.
Yeah, he's got like a job and shit.
Because you and your husband are just a bunch of like lushes. I'd say that's neglectful, right?
Yeah, it's pretty horrible.
At one point, Charlie delivered messages for Western Union, but began supplementing his wages by committing petty crimes. Kathleen and a man named Lloyd Deere were charged with adultery in 1949. She was released upon promise she would return for a court date, but failed to show up. Then she skipped town, leaving Charlie alone in Indianapolis to fend for himself. The whole reason Kathleen had gotten busted for adultery happened to be because Charlie had been charged with stealing, which was actually in order to find something to eat. So the story is he like broke into this gas station just simply trying to find some food because he's a kid. He's 14. He's living alone. Breaks into this gas station looking for some food, and he found a cigar box that had some money in it and decided to take that. He was arrested again for stealing a bicycle, and once they figured out he had stolen this money and he had stolen this bicycle, they put two and two together, and they're like, this kid's a runaway. So they sent him to live with Kathleen again. And when they go to, find Kathleen, she's shacked up with somebody else at this point and gets charged with adultery.
Oh, really?
Has some dude over her house. I don't know the exact. Yeah. So she and this other man get charged with adultery. And that is when he runs away again. He tells police that he didn't want to live with his mother because she lived in sin. So he's already honing his manipulative skills. And they were able to send him to live with an aunt for a bit. With no one in the family able to get a grip on Charlie, Kathleen decided to send him to the Gabalt School for Boys in Terre Haute, Indiana, which was run by Catholic priests. One of the priests described the boys as having parental neglect at home, a lack of home training, and that most of the boys grew up in an unfavorable environment, which I would say all of those things perfectly fit Charlie.
You know what the priest really didn't like about some of these boys was they played hard to get. You know what I mean?
You're terrible.
I'm just saying.
Corporal punishment was still normal at the time when Charlie was admitted, and punishments included beatings with a wooden paddle or a leather strap. The school housed boys from the 5th to 10th grade. There was a farm where they grew fresh vegetables. Psychological testing was performed at the entrance into the school, and these tests described Charlie as having moodiness and a persecution complex.
So is that kind of paranoia that people are out to get you kind of thing?
Well, the persecution complex is more like he thinks he's always getting the shit into the stick, and he's always being blamed for stuff, and
more so than other people.
again, like not accepting responsibility for his own actions. Like, I chose to do this, instead of saying I chose to steal. It was, well,
Oh, they're just piling on me. It's
yeah,
not
they're
my
just picking
fault.
on me. It's not my fault.
Okay.
My mom, my neck, my back, whatever. Yeah.
Hey, I was 14. I had a job. I lived down at the hotel down by the tracks. I wasn't bothering anybody. I went in there. I was just looking for a simple meal, a hot meal.
No, I mean, young Charlie, he's had a tough life.
No, he has, definitely.
I mean, he has issues, and if only there had been something more available to him, maybe some stability, some therapy, like he may have gone in a different direction. But it seems to me that kind of from the beginning, he's not really stood a chance in life.
No, and he's not going to find any. I mean, notoriously, these boy homes for boys were full of abuses, physical, mental, sexual, just a hard place to live, you know?
Just according to my research, which, this school may have a reputation as being a fucking terrible place, but according to Charlie, Kathleen, and others, this first school he was sent to was like a cakewalk compared to where he will go in the future.
So
it really wasn't, it didn't seem like it was that bad.
Okay.
Which, I mean, may have been terrible. They were obviously beating kids with leather straps and paddles.
Right.
But overall, he said it was definitely not the worst place he had gone to. So he runs away from the school before his time there is completed. Charlie was arrested for robbery of $1,700 from a Peoria, Illinois market and was sent to Boys Town in Omaha. After only 4 days at Boys Town, Charlie, along with another resident, stole a car and went on a robbery spree before capture. He was then sent to the Indiana Boys School of Plainfield, which was a reform school. And unlike the other facilities, Dylan, the reform school was horrific.
Oh, so up to this point, they were just kind of boys' homes.
Yes.
Or boys' schools. And now this is his first foray into the full-on reform school.
Yes.
Where you're going to be in there with a bunch of other badass little kids.
Delinquents that have committed crimes, like serious crimes,
Okay.
Yeah.
These types of institutions, reform schools, all this stuff is what molded Carl Panzram into the monster that he was.
A lot of Charles' life kind of mimics Carl Panzram.
God, I must say, he's underrated and seldom talked about, but he was one of the scariest damn people I've ever learned about.
Oh, yeah. Carl Panzram.
Full-on monster.
Total monster. Charlie, who was still quite small, stood only around 5 feet tall. Now, he was bullied and beaten by the other boys, particularly the older boys. He was also repeatedly raped by the other inmates. During this time, Charlie developed a casual attitude about rape, later saying, quote, getting raped, they can just wipe that off. I don't feel someone got violated, and it's a terrible thing. I just thought, clean it off. That's all it is.
That's sad.
During this time, Charlie learned a sort of a self-defense mechanism that he called the insane game to ward off aggressors. His top goal was survival, and in order to self-preserve, he decided if he acted completely crazy, it usually kept people from messing with him. He would just go into like a berserker mode, do whatever it took for people to be like, that guy's fucking crazy, and then they would just leave him alone.
So just make people think you're totally unpredictable.
Yes.
There's no telling what he'll do.
And we've seen this. He utilizes this even into his adult years in interviews. We've seen it.
I think it was. I think this was a learned tactic of his, and I do think he turned it on and off.
He did. And he
Totally.
learned it when he was in juvie. So definitely. He escaped the facility with 4 other boys and was nabbed about 12 hours later. By 1951, 16-year-old Charlie tried to escape again by stealing a car with 2 other inmates. They went on a 3-day robbery spree, finally getting caught near Beaver, Utah. In total, they had held up between 15 to 20 gas stations
Damn.
on this 3-day crime spree.
Getting out
And got all the way to Utah? I mean, that's a pretty good distance for 3 teenage juvenile delinquents, right?
Well, and back then you could do that. It was a lot easier to just, as long as you just kept on the road heading in a certain direction, it was hard for the police to catch up with you or connect things together,
Yeah. In total, Charlie would escape 18 times in 3 years. 18 times.
Well, again, nobody tells him what to do. He lives by his own rules.
Instead of sending Charlie straight to prison after this crime spree, he was ordered to the National Training School in Washington, D.C. In 1954, he was described by psychiatrists as a slick but sensitive boy. His IQ at the Washington School was reportedly 109, despite being illiterate. He was called aggressively antisocial, but by now Charlie had learned to manipulate psychiatrists, telling them more of what they wanted to hear. During this time, he was able to convince officials to send him from this Washington, D.C. training school to Natural Bridge, Virginia, where there was a school that was more like a farm camp, low security, like not as intense,
I want to see the Natural Bridge.
We saw it,
We didn't go across it.
but we went there.
No, we didn't. Just carry on. I ain't been to the Natural Bridge.
You're crazy. We went there when we visited Lynchburg.
Are you talking about when we walked down up under that stuff? down them stairs and it was hot as fuck and I was about to die? That was the Natural Bridge. We saw the underneath of it.
You've literally been to the National Bridge Park.
You're going to have to take that out.
You are crazy.
You sound stupid.
He is. Do you hear? And now,
Y'all
y'all decide for yourself. Do you believe this man knows how to string beans? He don't even know he's been to the damn Natural Bridge. Anyway, moving along, Dylan, dumbass. Despite a parole hearing,
You're going to make me go Charles Manson on this shit.
You're making me go Charles Manson. Despite a parole hearing in 1952, when he could have been released, Charlie was caught holding a razor to a younger boy's throat and sodomizing him.
Ah, see, there you go. He's been victimized over and over, and now he's become the aggressor.
Absolutely, Dylan. He was then transferred to a federal reformatory in Petersburg, Virginia. In 7 months, Charlie racked up 8 infractions, including 3 homosexual acts.
Okay.
Which tended to be non-consensual. Like, Charlie was a rapist. He had learned that was a way to gain power and control over others.
Yeah.
Because it had been done to him.
It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate when someone is the victim and then they become, the aggressor in a situation like that because they know what it feels like to be powerless. But I guess in his mind, it's better to be the one in control than the one not. So that certainly doesn't excuse it, and I think it makes it almost worse if you've been victimized and you turn and do this to someone else.
He was then transferred to a maximum security reformatory in Chillicothe, Ohio, where he was labeled as dangerous to other inmates. Guards called him criminally sophisticated, with one stating, quote, "He shouldn't be trusted to cross the street." So they've got his number. Authorities deemed Charlie beyond rehabilitation. And he's a kid. He's not even 18.
Well, but he's been connected to the system for years at this point, in one way or the other.
Well, it's just very tragic.
Well, I'm
when
not saying you
think
should
about it.
write him off, but I guess, they're like, well, just what they're seeing out of him, the way he acts, the way he probably doesn't take any direction. He doesn't, anyone that does try to take pity on him and help him out, they probably quickly get tired of his antics, you know what I mean? And just not, I guess, but yeah. I mean, how do you write someone off at an age like that? That's tough.
Well, it's just, and I'm not making excuses for him because honestly, like, fuck Charles Manson. He sounds like a maniac kid that I would not want to deal with, right?
Even if they
Fuck
come
that
to
kid.
that point through some tragic means, it doesn't make it any less that they are an asshole and a monster.
I mean,
and
in some
yeah.
ways, I can see why Kathleen, wanted to just abandon him at a fire station. But
Yeah, but I think that was selfish intent on Kathleen's part.
well,
I mean,
no, definitely. But I mean, I feel sorry for him because it's almost like he had no choice but to be how he was. I mean, he from day one was sort of set on this path.
I will say, if you're going to put your child in one of those drop-offs at a fire station, you got to do it before they get any real size on them. Because I've tried stuffing mine in there, in those
In the
little
depository,
the deposit box.
Yeah.
And once they get so big and can kind of fight back, it makes it really tough to leave them there in that box.
You tried to fit me in that depository the
I
other
have
day.
not. I have not. I could fit you in
And
that
you were
box.
like, "Oh, your little legs," that you like try to
Yeah.
fold me up.
And then, of course,
And
the
I was
alarm.
like, this isn't working.
The alarm goes off inside, and they come out rushing out
And
to
they were
recover
like,
the
"She's
baby.
a middle-aged woman. We can't take her." And you were like, "Please."
They're like, "This is your wife," and I was like, "Yeah, well, whatever. She's acting like a baby, so
Yeah, I know.
they made me take you back with me."
All I did was ask you to put your clothes away. Gosh.
good.
Okay. But then in fall of 1952, Charlie made a complete change. He stopped committing infractions. Charlie spent the entire year of 1953 focusing on academics, learning to read, and he even studied automotive maintenance. He was even given an award on January 1st of 1954.
For biggest turnaround,
Yeah, just like being a little model student or whatever at this reform school.
okay.
By May of 1954, Charlie was released back into the custody of his aunt and uncle in West Virginia. Charlie had convinced the parole board he was the product of a troubled childhood, which he contributed to his bad behavior. He spent the previous 5 years in and out of institutions, and he deserved a chance. So they're going to buy into his bullshit, let him out.
So there is no chance he's really changed. You don't think this is the manipulating Charlie really turning it on?
Well, now, he does okay for a while, Dylan.
Maybe he's trying.
He does try. He returns to West Virginia. He divided his time between Nancy, his grandmother. By this time, she's moved closer to Wheeling, where her daughter's living in, what is that, McMechen? I don't know. So Nancy's moved there. Glenna still lives there, and Uncle Bill, and then Kathleen is flittering about from Indiana to West Virginia and just wherever she is. So he's kind of spending time with family, living here and there. Kathleen had all but written her son off during this incarceration. She's just like moved on, doing Kathleen. Charlie was able to get a job at Wheeling Downs, cleaning stables. He enjoyed the animals, but didn't like being told what to do. His grandmother forced Charlie to attend the Nazarene church and encouraged him to mingle with the other young people. They had a youth group. She would tell him, you need to go hang out, meet these young people. But he found himself once again being an outcast. Charlie was way more experienced than these other kids. Most of them were very naive kids from working class homes, raised in this strict Nazarene church. They didn't listen to secular music, didn't go to the movies, didn't go bowling.
Didn't rape people. So Charlie couldn't really find anything to connect with these other kids, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's at this point like a fucking grifter.
But yeah, so he's been run out doing his own thing. He's probably, seen all kinds of, done and learned how to do all kinds of petty crime. He's been a aggressor. He's been attacked. He's attacked people. So I'm sure in his eyes, these are just baby kids.
They're squares, man.
And they're square. They have no idea. They're naive and they're just dumb and not cool.
They thought Charlie was weird. They totally were like, he's weird. He's creepy. We don't want to hang out with him. He's annoying.
Even when he carved a cross of the Nazarene on his head trying to fit in, it didn't work.
By January of 1955, Charlie met Rosalie Willis, a waitress, and they got married. Rosalie quickly became pregnant, and Charlie tried to live a normal life with his new wife. He worked 2 jobs, And during this time, he got a guitar and taught himself to play. With money tight, Charlie turned once again to criminal exploits to earn some extra money. And he started stealing cars. But Wheeling, West Virginia had organized crime headed by a mob boss named Elias or Lias, Lias. Not sure how to say that correctly. And Charlie didn't want to cross the mafia. Like, even though Charlie is some shit, he knew better than to fuck with this organized crime family.
That's interesting. Now, is this a homegrown sale, kind of like the Dixie Mafia started out, or do we know? Or is this full-on mob connection?
I think this is mafia because, surprisingly, Dylan, there are a lot of Italian residents in West Virginia.
Ah, okay. So
a lot of Italians went to West Virginia to work in the coal mines.
Okay. That makes sense.
There is a large Italian population, especially around Wheeling, and the pepperoni roll is a hugely popular food item in West Virginia. And it was created by like Italian immigrants that worked in the coal mines. They would make this pizza roll and take it to work.
So this is full on real mob connections.
Yeah, from what I understand, this was like a real mafia.
One of the five families.
So Charlie, like a branch of one of the. So Charlie knew better than to mess with these folks. So instead of stealing the cars in and around Wheeling, he was boosting cars in Ohio. Not to step on toes, right? In spring of 1955, Charlie and Rosalie headed to California in a stolen 1953 Mercury. By now, his mother, Kathleen, had been living in Los Angeles for a while. Charlie took his pregnant wife, moving across country so they could go live with Kathleen. When they got to California, Charlie worked a few odd jobs. But it didn't take long for cops to notice this car with Ohio plates and soon discover it was a stolen car. Charlie was arrested in order to undergo some psychiatric testing. He was able to talk his way into 5 years probation and no prison time, mainly because Rosalie was pregnant and he played it off like, I can't work if I'm in prison.
Yeah,
I gotta take care of my woman and my baby.
If I'm not here, who's going to abandon them when she has the baby?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So, Judge, I need your help here.
In February of 1956, Charles Manson Jr. was born. But Charlie soon began stealing again and was arrested. So from what I understand, he was working as like a busboy, and one of his jobs was like a parking attendant. I don't know if he was like a valet or just worked at like a parking lot and tended to cars, but he was breaking into the cars and stealing shit.
Okay.
So gets in trouble for that. He was sent to prison for 3 years at San Pedro's Terminal Island. At first, Rosalie and Kathleen visited Charlie regularly, but soon Rosalie dropped off and eventually left him, taking their son. Kathleen reported back that Rosalie had moved in with another man. And all I know about Rosalie in her later years is she passed away in 2009 while living in Tucson, Arizona. And their son, Charles Jr., died by suicide in 1993, supposedly because he was never able to accept his father's crimes.
No, surely not.
Just before his parole hearing, Charlie tried to steal a car and was sentenced to an extra 5 years of probation. It was 1953, the same year that Rosalie received a divorce decree. While incarcerated, Charlie began his education in the business of pimping.
It's hard out here. You know what I mean?
He wanted to be a pimp.
So he's graduating to something else, some other type of crime.
Yeah, I think he's realized he's not a great thief.
He's not good. He keeps getting caught.
Yes.
He's not big and strong, so you got to watch out for that too when you're stealing stuff and people want to kick your ass. So now he's going to get a long overcoat, brightly colored, and a hat with a feather in it. And hopefully he can have he has the musical stuff, so he can do the music thing on the side, and he can pimp to get it off the ground, just like a Hustle and Flow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So he's just like what's that guy's name? Terrence something.
Look, mine.
Mine.
Okay.
I know.
I love him.
I do too.
He's so handsome. Do you think he's
so?
pretty?
Terrence Howard, isn't that his
I
name?
always thought his eyes did something
yeah,
to people.
He's pretty.
Right?
I
I mean, I could say that.
Yeah, I think He's pretty.
I can just say
Maybe
that.
not in Hustle and Flow.
No.
Because he wears the curler.
No,
like
well, he
the
kills
rollers
it.
in his
He
hair,
kills the look.
And maybe the rollers.
But no,
is a
when
bad
he's cleaned
choice.
up in like a tux or some shit.
No, he's
oh,
pretty.
he glows.
He's pretty.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can he be on my list?
Is he your man crush?
Is he on my? Maybe.
Okay.
He's kind of. I don't know. He seems like a really cool dude. And plus, if I need to pimp people out, he'll show me how.
It was a movie rolled on.
As long as they can lay down some vocals. No, actually, he said some really cool shit about us not even being in this reality or something not long ago.
Okay, so moving along.
Wow.
Charlie was interested in learning from other inmates all of the intricacies of being a pimp. At only 22, Charlie had moved past a lot of these other inmates that had been on this waiting list to take the Dale Carnegie course, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
What the hell?
So despite this waiting list, Charlie, being ever so charming and charismatic and manipulative, was able to get like a first spot in line.
So they're going to teach him how to manipulate people, basically.
Yes!
What the hell?
Yes.
Is this real?
He loved this class. Like, ate it up with a spoon, Dylan. He fucking loved it. He learned that he needed to make people think his ideas were their ideas.
Wow.
Right?
This is interesting.
Oh, yeah. He's digging it. In September of 1958, Charlie was finally released into his mother's custody. He began working menial jobs, but what he really wanted was to be a pimp. By November of 1958, Charlie had met a 16-year-old girl named Judy and began pimping her out. Another girl named Flo was also one of Charlie's recruits, and she was the daughter of wealthy parents, and they supplied her with income. So Charlie, Judy, and Flo were kind of able to live off this trust fund this girl had.
I'm sorry, that's a really great name for a prostitute.
Flo?
Yeah, don't you think?
Sure.
Okay, so Judy and Flo, that's his.
That's his first ladies.
One of them's got to be his bottom bitch, right? His most favorite.
Okay,
His
is that how it works?
Yeah, you want to be the bottom bitch.
You don't want to be the top bitch?
No, you want to be the bottom bitch. I'm pretty sure that's how it
Okay.
works.
Are we talking about like a polygamist marriage? Or
You're number one when you're the bottom bitch.
Is this when you're pimping?
Well, yeah. Well, you never stop pimping, honey.
Okay.
It's a lifestyle.
Okay. Well, Charlie moved in at this time with another pimp, but Charlie he always makes the wrong choice, right? So Charlie and his two gals move in with this other pimp, and that guy's being monitored by the FBI. So Charlie's parole officer soon finds out about Charlie and his pimping.
You can't have two pimps for one, bro. What are you thinking? If you can't hold it down enough off of the income of your women, it's not your income, but you're taking all their money to at least
basically capitalism.
Keep your own spot. It is capitalism. We're the pimp, we're the hoes, and the government and the 1% are the pimps. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And they smack a bitch around lately. I tell you what,
smacking us, and they've been fucking us with no grease.
Talking about bitch, better have my money
up the ass, no grease.
Whoa.
And we're not making a damn dime off.
Damn. All you could hope for is spit or blood.
That's what happened.
Right?
That's what the government be doing.
Dry.
That's
Gulching us.
That's what Jeff Bezos and all these other fucking assholes be doing.
So yeah, you got to at least keep your own spot, Charlie, for you and your girls. I mean, I'm sorry, but it doesn't sound like he's pimping that well. He's not a good pimp.
He's an amateur pimp, okay? He's like a baby pimp. He is an intern pimp. That's probably why he's hanging out with this other dude, because he's just interning right now.
Also, he's always getting sent for coffees and shit.
Right? Like he's trying to learn the pimping business, Dylan.
Yeah, well, you want a roast beef on rye, is that right, Big Daddy pimp? I'm being an intern right now.
Like a gopher?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
In September of 1959, Charlie pled guilty to attempting to cash a forged U.S. Treasury check at a Ralph's grocery store, which he claimed, finally, when he's caught, that he stole from a mailbox, which was so stupid, because stealing from a mailbox, that's going to make it a
federal.
Even though a Treasury check is also a big deal, but you take it from a mailbox, very bad. So he had cashed one check for $24 successfully, but when he tried to cash the second check for $37.50, it drew questions. And of course, Charlie tries to run from the store and ends up getting busted. But what a little amount of money. He's writing a bad check,
He's just not good at criminalities.
He's not.
He should just get a job.
He received a 10-year probation sentence after a 19-year-old woman named Leona Musser, who had been a prostitute, began waging a campaign to keep Charlie from returning to prison. So this is some young woman that he's met that's a sex worker and has made friends with her, and she's trying to go to bat for him.
But she feels so strongly about it, and she's for Charlie, that she raises a big stink about keeping him out of jail.
She does. She had fellow inmates that knew him from jail and from his prison time write letters on Charlie's behalf. She detailed his difficult childhood and even claimed his right to a fair trial had been compromised. Leona claimed she would marry Charlie if he wasn't sent to prison, persuading the judge to give him a lesser sentence. According to Leona, she was pregnant. Now, the couple did marry, possibly so she couldn't be forced to testify against him. Charlie's attorney had requested he undergo a psychiatric evaluation, and he was again examined by a Dr. Edwin McNeil, who had observed him about 4 years earlier. McNeil wrote, quote, "Charlie doesn't give the impression of being a mean individual. However, he is emotionally unstable and very insecure. He is probably a sociopathic personality without psychosis. Unfortunately, he is rapidly becoming an institutionalized individual." He found work as a bartender because, again, he gets this probation, doesn't have to go to jail. He finds work as a bartender, but he just can't avoid trouble. Charlie stole a Triumph convertible, which he used to take Leona and another woman to New Mexico. Leona, who also went by the name Candy.
Oh, baby.
She didn't mind being a sex worker for Charlie. She was very willing to go out and do whatever she needed to do to make Charlie happy. While in New Mexico, Candy and the other girl turned tricks while Charlie ate mushrooms and psychedelic mushrooms and played Russian roulette with the Yaqui Indians.
Okay, so he's full-on deer hunter.
He's just like chilling and like hanging out. Yeah.
So is Candy, and we're going to call the other girl Cinnamon?
Sure.
Candy and Cinnamon. Those
Cinnamon,
are not...
like S-I-N, like sin.
Well, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
These are not easy prostitute monikers to live up to. I mean, you've really got to bring your A game.
If your name is Candy.
Or Cinnamon, let's be honest.
Okay.
Okay. So they're out working hard as they can.
In New Mexico, yep.
And Charlie's just kicking it.
He's eating mushrooms.
Eating mushrooms.
Playing Russian roulette.
With the
just
local
chilling
Indians.
With like the natives, the indigenous folks, like having a trip.
My gosh.
Yes.
Could you imagine?
Well, I mean, that sounds fun. Maybe not the Russian roulette part. Of course, in these times, maybe. I don't know.
No, I don't want to. Don't ever play. No one out there should play Russian roulette. It's very dangerous.
I feel like I play it every time I get in the car and go on the highway. Because
Just,
some of y'all fuckers can't drive. Okay.
well, not our listeners. They all drive great.
Well, I don't know. Some of them, maybe they know they can't drive. It's okay. I'm probably not a great driver either. Moving along, Dylan. So soon, Charlie was arrested for driving a stolen car across state lines and prostitution, which fell under the Mann Act, which says you can't transport women across state lines for sexual purposes.
So
Right.
now you're getting into bigger charges.
Yeah. In April of 1960, Leona turned state witness against Charlie, testifying that he forced her across state lines to work as a prostitute. And by now, Leona was pregnant with Charlie's baby because they're married. But
No.
she's like, fuck you, I'm going to tell on you.
So now she's in trouble too. So she was his biggest advocate to begin
She
with.
was his bottom bitch, Dylan.
Right. She was holding it down.
Candy was holding it down.
And now she's like, screw that. I'm going to get out of trouble
save
by
myself.
telling on you.
Yeah.
And renouncing the name Candy,
Yes.
in essence.
Despite this arrest, Charlie was able to flee, but was eventually caught in Laredo, Texas. While in jail awaiting trial, Leona gave birth to Charles Luther Manson, a son that Charlie would never meet. When his sentencing date arrived, Charles was given time in federal prison, 10 years at McNeil Island in the Puget Sound in Washington state. Leona and baby Charles would vanish from his life completely after this. On April 10th of 1963, Leona divorced Manson, citing, that he was incarcerated.
He's in jail.
Like felony incarceration.
He can't live up to his duties as my husband because he's not here. So there's that.
Yeah. 26-year-old Charlie was once again incarcerated. He began reading L. Ron Hubbard, focused on ways to manipulate people, and he considered elements of Scientology for recruitment ideas on getting himself more prostitutes once he was released.
He needs to rebuild his stable because all his girls are gone.
While in prison, Charlie learned to play steel guitar. With the arrival of the Beatles on the music scene, Charlie apparently was a big Beatles fan, was just mowed over by the Beatles sound, and started writing his own songs. He performed in inmate variety shows and talent shows at the prison. Was considered a very entertaining guy.
Yeah, I mean, people say that he could be considered talented in the, writing of songs and the performing them and playing the guitar and such.
Now, by now, Kathleen has divorced her husband, Lewis, and she had moved to Washington to be closer to Charlie while he was incarcerated. Charlie befriended an inmate who had contacts at Universal Studios in Hollywood and told him, once you get out of prison, you need to go look my friend up in L.A.
So you need to go to L.A. and we can get something going for you.
I think you could potentially get, a record deal. You should go see this guy. So Charlie's tucked that information back. During this time, he was in prison with actor Danny Trejo.
Yeah, Danny spent many years in real prison, right?
Dude, Danny Trejo has the most interesting life ever. He has a biography out there. Y'all should, read it. It is, wow. His life is a movie.
Yeah. He's the real deal.
I fucking love Danny Trejo.
Me too.
So anyway, he is in prison with Danny Trejo, and they participated in hypnosis sessions. Charlie was known to, he had started trying to hypnotize people and become a hypnosis or whatever, a hypnotizer. And Danny Trejo participated in his sessions.
Okay.
Right? Taking a trip. In June of 1966, Charlie was sent to Terminal Island for a second time to prepare for his early release from prison. And by the time Charlie was 32 years old, he had spent more than half his life behind bars. Before his release, Charles told officials that prison was his home and he requested to stay there. He didn't want to be released at this time.
So he's basically institutionalized.
At this point, he is resigned to the fact
He doesn't mind the routine of prison.
I'm okay just being here.
And every time I go out there, I just fuck it up, I guess, and I'll be back anyway, so I should just stay here.
Yeah. But they were like, nope, and they let him go. Less than a month after his release in 1967, Charlie moved to Berkeley, California with permission from his probation officer. He was transferred under the supervision of a doctoral candidate at UC Berkeley named Roger Smith, who operated the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic. Smith had been receiving funding to study the effects of drugs like LSD and methamphetamine.
Dude, that's the doctor.
That's the doctor.
That's the doctor I was telling you about.
Yeah.
Okay. So to fill everyone out there in, me and Heather also been talking about the period during this time of Haight-Ashbury, all that happened there, which we would like to talk about more, right?
And we will on our midweek.
Yes, we will. And there's that doctor. Some people have connected this guy to claim he had CIA connections, and they really were just it was just a big open air petri dish and studying the effects of these various drugs on people. And they would get them through there under the guise of free health care and patch them up, clean them up. But really, he was, just studying the effects of dosages of particularly LSD. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And now here Charlie is coming into this same environment.
And they've assigned this guy to be his probation officer.
Holy shit. No, whoa. He could be Charlie's handler. Oh my God.
Okay, well,
I can't even do. I can't look.
we can get into Manson conspiracy
Okay.
theories. Okay, but let's get through part 1. And when we get into part 2, Dylan, I will give you an opportunity to dive into some of those Manson theories that I know that are bouncing around in that little tiny brain of yours.
Man, it's pouring out my ears right now.
Yeah, well, is that what it is? Thought you were just full of shit. Okay, so once Charlie moves to Berkeley, he uses LSD for the first time there. He becomes fascinated with the novel Stranger in a Strange Land, a science fiction novel. San Francisco was like nothing Charlie had ever seen compared to the drab prison where he had essentially spent half of his life. Everything was colorful. It was wild. Social change was all around. You know, he was used to a very drab, as I mentioned, institution where all the men had short hair. They wore khaki uniforms. And now he's seeing men with long hair. He's seeing interracial couples.
Well, and
I mean, it's just like, whoa, it blows his mind.
Yeah, and even when he wasn't in prison, back and forth home, I guess, he was in West Virginia, which would be, quite a different environment than L.A., I'm sure, by far.
While at Berkeley, Charlie met a 23-year-old librarian named Mary Bruner. He talked the woman into letting him sleep over a few nights at her house, which soon became a permanent situation. Charlie wanted to make money as a musician, but paying gigs were few and far between. And there were musicians playing everywhere for free. I mean, this is the time that you've got the Grateful Dead and Haight-Ashbury, like, playing all over. You've got musicians on every corner in the park. Everybody wants to be a rock star at this point, right?
Right.
So here's Charlie, up against Janis Joplin to get a gig. Come on.
Well, yeah, you're in an area where other musicians are coming good that ended up being legends and icons, and they're all there kind of together at the same time.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, this is the rock and roll scene at this time, as we all know. I mean, it's you got psychedelic rock, all of that, and Charlie's trying to get up in it, not as successful. Pimping wouldn't work because free love and the sexual revolution had spread like wildfire in this area. So
Whoa.
Charlie's like, there's no way I can make money because these women are giving it away for free.
So the women are like, I'm not selling this. You can have it.
Yes.
Wow.
So Charlie's
damn.
He can't put a price tag on it.
And from the John's perspective, why pay for it when like 5 girls down the way there will give it to me for free?
Yeah, and some dudes
Right.
too. Everybody's just
Just offering it up.
Everybody's making love, not war, Dylan.
Wow, man, I bet it was so sticky back then. Don't you think?
Seems really gross.
It seems kind of gross. I'm gonna say
I
it.
feel like it's really, and there's a lot of pubic hair.
Why were we so? We were
not
still like
showering every day. I don't know.
half primate at that point. Why were people so hairy?
I don't know.
I mean, I know people nowadays like trim it up or clean up or whatever you want to call it, but it's like everybody had so much more hair.
We were calling it a stanky jungle. Remember
The stanky jungles.
Previous episodes, it was a stanky jungle.
Definitely.
Right? So there's just a lot of stanky jungle going on and a lot of exchanging of stanky jungles.
It's like the dark continent.
And
over
I don't know. Okay? It's like the heart of darkness. I don't know if I'm ready to venture in there.
Explorers would not even go inland,
So in Mary Bruner, Charlie found a meal ticket. She was like, kind of a plain, conservative, Midwestern girl. So it didn't take much manipulation on Charlie's part. Like, all he had to do was tell her how beautiful she was. She was so smart. She was all the things that she's probably never been told by a man in her life.
Oh,
let's be honest.
When she makes those kooky Midwestern casseroles, he acted like they were really tasty, right?
Probably. So Charlie said, it just wasn't very difficult to manipulate her. All he had to do is tell her she's pretty and sleep with her.
Well, that's old as time, that people telling somebody something they want to hear.
Yeah, because he's a hobosexual. After they'd settled into a routine, Charlie began bringing other women to Mary's apartment. Now, she did not like this at first, but Charlie said if he made her feel beautiful, Mary would just go along with it. Because his attitude was, hey, everybody's practicing free love, Mary. We should be too.
Okay.
And you're really beautiful. And she would just be like, okay,
You're so pretty, I've got somebody else to hang out with.
please change the sheets after Charlie. So she got used to sharing him. She was accustomed to sharing him after a while. Mary was really knowledgeable about environmental issues, and Charlie soaked up this information and committed himself to being an environmentalist, something that like an attitude he developed and would carry, later on in life. Like, we should be saving the planet, man.
Yeah.
He began spending his days across the bay in San Francisco. The hippies who lived in Haight-Ashbury were people who wanted to share and take everyone at face value. Charlie, who had spent his entire life learning to take advantage, found a hunting ground. Like, he's a predator, and these people are easy prey.
Well, it's just full of naive young people from all over the country. They're flooding into this area at such a fast rate.
Sharing everything. Here, let me feed you. You need clothes. Here, I'll give you the shirt off my back, man. You want some weed? Like,
yeah.
You need you want to have sex? Let's do it. Yeah.
I've been to small festivals where that hippie
I bet you have.
ideals energy. I've seen people manipulate it. You can just I can read people and I'm like, that guy's a fucking ass or that woman's some shit. But they're using those people because they're trying to live that whole share everything you got and then nobody wants lifestyle, which sounds great on paper. But you're always going to have these people around the edges like vultures.
The predators.
Using these people. And it doesn't surprise me that Charles was instantly like, oh, yeah, this is just open season. I can get everything I want.
Open season on the stanky jungle.
There. Oh, God. I keep thinking of musk, like musty things. Just stop. They're not showering all the time.
They're all musky,
musty,
and they're probably just sitting around eating chili dogs in the park that they cooked over an open flame. So in the summer of 1967, to give you an idea of what life was like in Haight-Ashbury, in this neighborhood in particular, which, by the way, is named after two cross streets, in case y'all didn't know that. In that summer of love, baby, 75,000 young people converged on this neighborhood. Many were runaways. And 75,000 people in a small neighborhood.
I'm not even sure how many blocks, but you're talking a matter of blocks.
And it's on the edge of the Golden Gate State Park, or Golden Gate Park.
Right.
So you've got people in the park, people in the streets. It is a madhouse.
Possums in the sheets.
Yeah.
So yeah, they just keep coming.
Freaks in the streets, baby.
To where there's nowhere for anyone. There's no jobs for anyone that's come that does want to work. There's the infrastructure is. I mean, they're coming at such a rate.
People camping in the park, sleeping in the streets, shitting in the streets.
Yeah, it's almost like
fucking in the streets.
A state of emergency situation for this area.
Drug dealers are lurking the streets, and so did Charles Manson. The summer of love was on. Walking the streets, Charlie saw misguided youth who were desperate for a leader. Groups of young people huddled around street preachers and these spiritual gurus at the time. And though Charlie knew he eventually would need to go to Los Angeles to secure a record deal, the guru lifestyle was very appealing to him. Charlie, after all, was seeking respect and wanted followers, people who would look up to him for once. In the Haight, there was an obvious way to do that. For his ego and the considerable number of skills he had learned in prison survival, and in part by learning Dale Carnegie's course on how to manipulate others by exploiting their strengths and weaknesses, Charlie decides to reinvent himself as a spiritual guru and hopes to gain a flock of worshipers, especially young women who would cater to him. This whole idea was irresistible to Charles Manson. It is there that Charlie set out to first study, then began recruitment. And that is where we will leave you until next week when we bring you Charles Manson Part 2.
Oh my God. I knew we were going to leave it there. It's a perfect spot. I'm thinking about so much right now.
You are?
Yeah.
What are you thinking about?
Just all the stuff that happened back then.
The age of Aquarius?
In this area. And I've just learned more about Charlie's upbringing than I ever knew before.
Really?
So I want to thank you for that. I'm not saying this information is not out there. I'm sure people that are diehards and listen to everything ever about Charles Manson may have heard some of this, but I hadn't heard any of it. As far as, just anything beyond, he was basically almost abandoned in the hospital. He was unnamed for some days, some time before he finally was the Manson baby, if you will. But no, thank you for fleshing that out and really giving me a picture of what he came from and the life he lived up to this point. Because it really just gives you perspective, right?
Here's your one chance, Charlie. Don't let me down.
Well, no, just Charles ending up in Haight-Ashbury at this point with all this other stuff going on is almost it's too perfect for someone like him and for what he goes on to become. I mean, it all makes sense now.
Fate, man. It's destiny, man.
Wow. Baby.
You got to get on out there with the stars, man. You know what I'm saying? Be a little badass on the street and the stars align, and then you get yourself some girls, and then you start a cult, man.
Yeah, a cult/pimp agency.
A pimp agency, man.
Right.
It ain't no pimping.
Yeah,
You got a commodity. I'm just trying to help you advertise it. Sorry, I'm trying to be Charles Manson over here. I'm doing my dance.
We're trying to get your punani up there with the pork barrel futures, okay?
Yes.
It's a commodity.
Exactly. Should be on the stock market.
All right, so thank you for that, Heather. That was wonderful. I can't wait for our midweek. I'm going to start digging even...
Oh, yeah. So our midweek, we are planning to bring you more information about Haight-Ashbury. We're going to set the scene for what Charles has found in the San Francisco neighborhood, and we're going to talk a little bit about the hippie culture, and I've dug up some crimes that happened in this area during the time Charles Manson was there. And I know we're all very shocked by the crimes of Charles Manson, but there was some fucked up shit that went on in San Francisco at this time. I found a few murder cases that are whoa.
Oh, it was a crazy
stuff.
time.
Crazy stuff.
It was a crazy time. And that's not even to mention what the talent in music that was there at this time.
We can talk about we're going to talk about it all.
Holy schnickies.
Yeah, and then, of course, next week we're going to bring you part 2, where we will get into California Charlie.
Yeah, man.
Where he's California dreaming.
It's like, I'm going to go live at the ranch, man.
And ceasing to exist like a beach boy. All right, so if you want to send Mountain Murders an email, you can write us at mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. Find us on social media. And if they're feeling really frisky, Dylan, and they just can't get enough of Mountain Murders, they can join us at Patreon. How can they do that? How can they subscribe to Patreon?
They can go to patreon.com/mountainmurderspodcast.
That's it.
And you can find multiple tiers for as little as $1. You can support the podcast and help us continue making this cool stuff. You also get access to a lot of bonus content.
And we'll teach Dylan how to string beans.
And you get the ad-free experience on every episode.
Which is cool.
It's cool. Who wants to hear commercials?
Yeah,
I don't want to hear
but
commercials.
It's like a necessary evil.
Well, I must say we don't put in as many as a lot of people do. But we try to hold up to that. But if you don't want to hear any at all, and there's a shit ton. I'll just say it, a shit ton. That is a metric
We've got
used for measuring.
4 years of Patreon episodes.
A lot of extra content
so
over there.
There's a lot of different episodes.
All right.
And we're getting out a new one soon.
And you can get access to our incredible Discord chat where you can access us 24/7 and we can just learn about each other.
It's true.
Okay.
All right. Well, hope everybody has a great week. Ignore the world around you. And we may all be dead after July 5th when CERN cranks up. So if that's the case, hey, it was nice knowing y'all, nice having a podcast.
Yeah. If we all cease to exist, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Now I'm going to go listen to the Charles Manson song, Cease to Exist, because it's a good one. Bye.